fluorescent lights of the Bureau of Absurd Affairs flickered ominously, casting long shadows across the sterile conference room where the final confrontation was about to unfold. At the head of the long, polished table stood the auditor, his faceless mirrored mask reflecting the anxious faces of the clerks arrayed before him. His black suit was impeccable, the embodiment of cold rationality, every inch a stark contrast to the colorful chaos the Bureau represented. "This office," he began, his voice a chilling monotone, "has become a breeding ground for disorder and inefficiency. It is time to restore true order. Nonsense must be eradicated. Effective immediately, all absurd phenomena regulations are hereby null and void." A stunned silence fell over the room. Eliza Quill's fingers twitched, the ink stains on her hands a testament to years spent navigating the labyrinthine forms that governed impossibility itself. Her sharp eyes met the auditor's mask, a flicker of defiance igniting within. Beside her, Harold Pindle straightened his ill-fitting suit, clutching his stack of unicorn parking permits with a mixture of fear and determination. Miratok bounced on the balls of her feet, sketchbook clutched tightly, her vibrant hair a stark beacon of rebellion. The auditor's proclamation was the spark that ignited a firestorm of resistance. The clerks knew that surrendering to pure logic meant the death of the Bureau's very essence, the celebration and careful management of the absurd. But how to fight an enemy who wielded reason like a weapon, and who commanded a faction of ultra-rational bureaucrats bent on purging nonsense from society? In the cramped corners of the office, the clerks convened in whispered urgency. Eliza, with her calm pragmatism, spearheaded the strategy sessions. "We know the rules better than anyone," she said, her voice steady yet charged with unspoken passion. "If the auditor wants to dismantle nonsense, we'll weaponize the bureaucracy itself. We'll exploit every loophole, every contradictory regulation. Let absurdity be our shield." Harold, though hesitant, found himself drawn into the plan. His obsession with order now served a higher purpose, preserving the very chaos he feared. Myra's whimsical energy infused the group with creative vigor, her sketches evolving into intricate diagrams of protest and policy subversion. The once disparate clerks were united by a common cause. Felix Grimble, the eccentric archivist, emerged from the shadows clutching a dusty tome of forgotten permits and magic-infused paperwork. "If paperwork is the backbone of bureaucracy," he quipped, adjusting his colorful bow tie, "then magic is its beating heart." As the auditor's forces moved to seize control, they found themselves ensnared in a web of contradictory directives, misplaced Mondays reappearing unpredictably, and time travel licenses that bent causality in their favor. Felix's unexpected magical interventions realigned the errant days, restoring fractured timelines and confusing the purging agents. Nina Voss, with grease-streaked hands, kept the absurdity machines humming against all odds, while Carl Tannen rewrote legalese with a twist of imaginative loopholes that confounded the auditor's faction. The Bureau buzzed with a renewed energy, a symphony of bureaucratic absurdity orchestrated by its most devoted clerks. Juno Sparks, ever the watchful journalist, documented the upheaval with relentless zeal, her camera capturing moments of defiance, laughter, and unexpected camaraderie. The public, drawn in by her exposes, began to see the value in the Bureau's peculiar mandate, a balance between order and chaos that fostered creativity and joy. In a climactic standoff, the auditor confronted Eliza once more. His mask gleamed coldly under the harsh lights. "You persist in this folly," he intoned. "But the world demands progress, not chaos." Eliza met his gaze, her voice unwavering. "Progress without imagination is stagnation. The absurd isn't the enemy, it's the spark that keeps us human. The confrontation ended not with violence, but with a reluctant acknowledgement. The auditor's rigid vision fractured under the weight of the Bureau's resilient absurdity. The clerks had not only preserved their world, but had transformed it, blending the precision of bureaucracy with the unpredictable magic of nonsense. As the dust settled, the Bureau stood reborn, a place where order and chaos danced in uneasy harmony. Eliza looked around at her colleagues, their faces alight with hope tempered by the scars of battle. The fight was far from over, but the last stand had been won. Outside, the city hummed with the quiet magic of misplaced Mondays, the subtle shimmer of unicorn parking badges, and the endless possibilities of time travel licenses, all regulated by the Bureau of Absurd Affairs, guardians of the impossible. And as the clerks returned to their desks, the dance between order and absurdity continued, a delicate, joyful waltz that promised new adventures just beyond the next form to be filled, the next paradox to be tamed, the next absurdity to be embraced. After all, Eliza mused, quoting one of her favorite absurdist texts, "Logic will get you from A to B. Imagination will take you everywhere." The chapter closed on that note, a promise, a challenge, a hope. The Bureau lived on. In the grey dawn of a city that thrived on nonsense, the Bureau of Absurd Affairs awoke to a storm. The usual hum of fluorescent lights and the soft clatter of keyboards was pierced by an unrelenting chorus of news alerts and social media uproar. Juno Sparks, the Bureau's most persistent and sardonic investigator, had released her latest expose, and it was a bombshell. The article, titled "Paperwork or Folly," inside the Bureau of Absurd Affairs, spread like wildfire. Juno's words were sharp, her tone unyielding. She described the Bureau as a Kafkaesque labyrinth of contradictory rules, whimsical mandates, and bureaucratic inertia. With a mixture of wit and scathing critique, she exposed the tangled webs of time travel licenses, unicorn parking permits, and the baffling phenomenon of misplaced Mondays that the clerks managed daily. She questioned the sanity and necessity of regulating nonsense, painting the Bureau as both a guardian and a prisoner of absurdity. The press conference announcing the expose was a spectacle. Juno stood under the harsh glare of camera flashes, her red hair a vibrant beacon against the backdrop of grim-faced reporters. Her voice rang out clear and uncompromising as she answered questions, weaving anecdotes from clandestine interviews with clerks and leaked documents that revealed internal conflicts and procedural chaos. The public was captivated, divided between amusement, disbelief, and genuine concern. Back inside the Bureau, the impact was immediate and palpable. Eliza Quill sat at her cluttered desk, the glow of her cracked monitor illuminating her face as she read the headline for the third time. Her fingers, perpetually stained with ink from frantic note-taking and form-filling, clenched reflexively around a time travel permit. The words on the screen echoed her own conflicted thoughts. Was their work a noble defense of the impossible, or merely a farce wrapped in red tape? Harold Pindle's office was a stark contrast, a sanctuary of order in the chaos. Yet even here, tension seeped through the walls. Harold paced anxiously, clutching a sheaf of unicorn parking permits as if they were lifelines. His slicked-back grey hair seemed more disheveled than usual, and his oversized spectacles glinted with worry. Nearby, Myratok sat cross-legged on the floor, her brightly colored hair a splash of rebellion amid the dull palette of bureaucratic despair. She doodled whimsical creatures on a notepad, her sketches a silent protest against the mounting pressure. "They don't understand," Harold muttered, his voice tight. "We keep things from spiraling into chaos. Without us, the city would be overrun by unregulated nonsense. Mira shrugged, her eyes sparkling with mischievous defiance. Or maybe they're just tired of the nonsense we call order. Maybe it's time for something new. Felix Grimble and Nina Voss were a study in contrast. Felix, with his colorful bow ties and spectacles perched low on his nose, shuffled through piles of files with a distracted cheerfulness that belied the urgency of the moment. Nina, practical and focused, adjusted the settings on a malfunctioning absurdity machine, her grease-stained hands moving with precise determination. Together, they whispered plans and theories, their unlikely alliance a beacon of hope amid the swirling uncertainty. "We have to show them what the Bureau really does," Felix said, eyes twinkling behind his glasses. "Not just the paperwork, but the magic beneath." The public debate raged on. Some saw the Bureau as a necessary absurdity, a quirky but vital safeguard that protected the city's delicate balance between reality and nonsense. Others viewed it as an outdated, costly relic clinging desperately to power in a world that demanded rationality and order. Carl Tannen, the legal advisor, found himself drafting new statements and clarifications amid the chaos, his conservative demeanor strained by the need to adapt. Greta Loop, the receptionist, fielded a flood of ridiculous requests and angry calls, her dry wit a small comfort to both callers and clerks alike. As the day wore on, the clerks gathered in the break room, a motley group united by shared confusion and determination. Eliza, her voice steady despite the turmoil, addressed them. "This isn't just about us," she said. "It's about what nonsense means to this city, and maybe to all of us. We've seen what happens when order is imposed without room for chaos. We have to find a way to show the world that nonsense isn't the problem, it's the solution." Harold nodded reluctantly, and Mira grinned, already sketching plans for a public art installation celebrating absurdity. Felix hummed a forgotten tune, and Nina tinkered quietly with her machines, readying them for the next challenge. Outside, the city continued its strange dance, a place where misplaced Mondays might still wander. Unicorns sought parking, and time travelers queued for permits. Under the glare of the public eye, the Bureau of Absurd Affairs braced for its next act, a blend of bemused frustration and hopeful absurdity that was, after all, its very essence. And as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows over the city's surreal skyline, the question lingered in the air. Could the Bureau survive the scrutiny, or would the absurd finally be silenced? The dance was far from over. The city square pulsed with an energy rarely seen outside the pages of the Bureau's own surreal reports. Stretched taut between lampposts were banners as impossibly vivid as Myra's brightly colored hair, fluttering like the wings of some fantastical creature born from the collective whimsy of the gathered crowd. Street performers, their costumes a patchwork of improbable hues and shapes, weaved through clusters of onlookers, their movements a dance both practiced and delightfully chaotic. The air was thick with the scent of spilled ink from freshly printed pamphlets, the sharp tang of citrus from street vendors, and the distant hum of street musicians tuning their instruments for the evening's crescendo. At the heart of this spectacle stood Myra Tock, her mismatched clothes a vibrant manifesto of the absurd, clutching her ever-present sketchbook as if it were a talisman. Her voice rang clear and passionate, carrying the rallying cry that had ignited this spontaneous festival. The celebration of nonsense, not as a nuisance, but as a vital thread in the city's tapestry. Around her, faces lit with smiles, eyes gleamed with the recognition of something long suppressed yet deeply yearned for. Children chased after whimsical creatures that seemed to have slipped out from Mira's doodles. their laughter weaving into the city's nocturnal symphony. Meanwhile, inside the more staid chambers of the bureau, Eliza Quill prepared for a different kind of performance. The conference room, bathed in the sterile glow of fluorescent lights, was a stark contrast to the riotous colors just beyond its walls. Here, rows of muted suits and skeptical eyes awaited her words. Papers, once impenetrable tomes of bureaucratic rigidity, now bore the touch of Eliza's reformist spirit, a delicate balancing act of maintaining order without suffocating creativity. As Eliza stepped to the podium, her fingers ink-stained from the countless hours poring over regulations stamped rhythmically against the surface, she began with a quote from a little-known absurdist philosopher, a subtle nod that was met with a puzzled yet intrigued murmur. Her voice was calm but resolute, weaving logic and whimsy into a tapestry that argued not for anarchy but for an evolved understanding, one where structure served as the stage for the spontaneous dance of nonsense. Harold Pindle sat rigidly beside her, his oversized spectacles catching the light as his eyes flickered between the proposal and the faces in the room. His usual anxiety was tempered by a flicker of reluctant hope, sign of the profound shifts occurring not only in the bureau but within himself. The tension was palpable, a tightrope stretched between tradition and transformation. Outside the formal proceedings, Juno Sparks moved like a whirlwind, her camera snapping candid shots that captured the bureau's newfound humanity. Her sharp eyes found moments of genuine connection, Felix Grimble's colorful bow tie peeking from behind a mountain of papers. Greta Loop's warm smile as she greeted visitors with a blend of professionalism and mischief. Each image was a testament to the bureau's evolving identity, a story told through laughter and light that Juno was eager to share with a public hungry for understanding. In the quiet sanctuary of the archives, Felix and Carl Tannen worked side by side, an unlikely duo united by purpose. Felix's eccentric cheerfulness softened Carl's legalistic precision, their conversations a blend of magical anecdotes and meticulous clause crafting. By the dim glow of a single desk lamp, they drafted the new legal framework, an embodiment of the Bureau's commitment to balance. Here, the past's forgotten magic met the future's pragmatic needs, forging a path forward that honored both. As the festival's last notes faded into the night, and the council's decision hung in the air like a held breath, a palpable shift settled over the Bureau. The dance between order and absurdity was no longer a precarious balancing act, but a harmonious choreography. Myra's vision, once dismissed as naive, had sparked a cultural movement. Eliza's steady hand had navigated the complexities of policy to open the door to possibility. And somewhere in the depths of the Bureau, a single misplaced Monday slipped quietly back into its rightful place, proof that sometimes embracing the impossible was the only way to truly keep control. The night ended not with resolution, but with an invitation to continue the dance, to celebrate the absurd, and to cherish the magic woven into the madness. The Bureau of Absurd Affairs was no longer just a regulator of nonsense. It had become its most devoted guardian and its most enthusiastic advocate. As the city lights flickered and the stars winked knowingly overhead, the question lingered in the minds of all who had witnessed the transformation. How long could they sustain this delicate balance? But for now, in this moment, hope reigned, wrapped in the colorful cloak of absurdity. The dance continues. In the waning light of a rather ordinary afternoon, the Bureau of Absurd Affairs buzzed with a peculiar energy that only a place dedicated to the regulation of nonsense could muster. The usual hum of fluorescent lights and the tapping of keyboards were joined by the unmistakable click of a camera shutter as Juno Sparks, the Bureau's ever-curious investigative journalist, maneuvered through the labyrinth of desks and filing cabinets with practiced ease. Her short red hair caught stray beams of light, and the leather jacket she wore seemed almost a badge of honor in this sanctuary of absurdity. Juno had spent weeks embedded within the Bureau's chaotic heart, chronicling the peculiar rituals and bureaucratic ballet that governed the world's most illogical permits. Now, as she sat in the cluttered office, surrounded by piles of files, photographs, and the odd misplaced Monday calendar, the words flowed from her fingers like a river of wit and insight. Each keystroke was a tribute to the clerks who had welcomed her into their world where unicorn parking rules were as serious as any legal code, and where the line between reality and nonsense was as thin as a bureaucrat's patience. "You know," Juno mused aloud, glancing up from her laptop, "this place is less about control and more about celebrating the chaos within order." Felix Grimble, the Bureau's beloved archivist, looked up from his colorful bow tie and spectacles perched precariously on his nose. "Ah, Miss Barks, you capture it well. The magic is in the madness, after all." Felix was in the midst of entertaining a small gathering of clerks during a brief respite from paperwork. With a flourish, he produced a deck of cards that seemed to shimmer with impossibility. A quick shuffle, a dramatic flick, and suddenly, a cascade of sparkling confetti fluttered down like enchanted snow, eliciting peals of laughter from his audience. His cheerful eccentricity was a balm to the weary souls of the Bureau, a reminder that beneath the layers of red tape and regulation lay the heart of joyful nonsense. Eliza Quill, the lead clerk with her short cropped dark hair and perpetually ink-stained fingers, observed the scene with a faint smile. Years ago, she had been a skeptical enforcer of rules, wary of the chaos that threatened to undermine her carefully constructed order. But now, sitting beside Myra Toku's brightly colored hair and mismatched clothes seemed to embody the Bureau's spirit, she felt a reluctant sense of pride. "Juno's piece," Eliza said quietly, "it's not just satire, it's a mirror." Myra nodded enthusiastically, her sketchbook balanced on her knees as she doodled a whimsical creature inspired by Felix's latest trick. "It shows that we're more than just clerks and regulations. We're guardians of a vital kind of magic." The Bureau's inner sanctum was no longer a place of mere absurd administration. It had become a living testament to the human need for laughter amidst chaos, for order that did not smother imagination. Juno's expose was more than a story. It was a celebration of their collective journey that had seen skepticism give way to acceptance, rigidity soften into flexibility, and isolation bloom into community. As the day faded into evening, the staff gathered in the common rumor space, where official seals adorned walls alongside Myra's vibrant doodles, where the scent of old paper mingled with the faint aroma of Felix's herbal tea. Under the soft glow of retro 80s style lamps, stories were exchanged, laughter bubbled freely, and the boundaries between clerk and friend blurred. To the Bureau, Felix toasted, raising a mismatched mug, "May our nonsense never be tamed." The room echoed with cheers, the sound a harmonious blend of bemused frustration and hopeful absurdity that defined their peculiar existence. In this moment, the legacy of laughter was not just a memory, but a living, breathing promise that no matter the challenges ahead, the Bureau of Absurd Affairs would continue its delicate dance between order and chaos, forever cherishing the magic within the madness. But even as the laughter lingered, shadows of future trials whispered beyond the horizon, reminding them that in the world of nonsense, the next absurd adventure was never far away. The Bureau of Absurd Affairs never quite looked the same after the tumultuous events that had racked its fluorescent-lit halls. Yet, on this particular morning, The familiar hum of absurdity machines filled the air with a comforting rhythm, a testament to resilience forged in the crucible of chaos. Eliza Quill sat at her desk, fingers ink-stained as always, eyes fixed on the intricate details of a time travel license. Her demeanor, once rigid and skeptical, now shimmered with a quiet acceptance. Across the room, Myra Tock's bright hair caught the pale light as she doodled fantastical creatures in her ever-present sketchbook, her whimsical energy a spark that had ignited new life within the bureau's walls. Harold Pindle, the ever-anxious supervisor, stood by the window, his oversized spectacles perched precariously as he gazed out over a city where unicorns parked with an elegant disregard for traditional rules. The skyline was a patchwork of the impossible and the mundane, a fitting backdrop for a place where nonsense was not only tolerated but meticulously managed. Harold's lips twitched into a rare smile, a sign of his gradual embrace of the Bureau's evolving ethos. He had learned, sometimes the hard way, that order and chaos were not adversaries but partners in a delicate dance. Nearby, Juno Sparks adjusted her camera lens, capturing moments that spoke to the Bureau's paradoxical nature, a place where paperwork piled high and absurdity flowed freely. Her exposures had stirred public debate, but here, amidst the stacks of forms and the occasional malfunctioning absurdity machine, she found a story far richer than mere scandal. It was a human story filled with the humor, frustration, and hope that came from trying to govern the ungovernable. Felix, Grimble, and Nina Voss huddled over a particularly stubborn absurdity machine, their laughter mingling with the clinks and whirs of their tinkering. Felix, with his colorful bow ties and magician's flair, was a reminder that magic still lingered in unexpected places. Nina's practical expertise grounded their efforts, bridging the gap between fantasy and function. Together, they symbolized the Bureau's spirit, a blend of creativity and pragmatism. Eliza rose from her desk, her gaze sweeping across the room filled with clerks who had become more than colleagues. They were a peculiar family, bound by a shared mission. She approached Myra and Harold, the trio emblematic of the Bureau's journey from conflict to collaboration. "We've come a long way," Eliza said, her voice carrying the weight of experience softened by newfound hope. "The dance between order and absurdity isn't about choosing sides. It's about knowing the steps and when to improvise." Myra's eyes sparkled behind her mismatched glasses. "And sometimes, you just have to twirl wildly and see where it takes you." Harold adjusted his suit jacket, a gesture more comfortable now than defensive. "I'm beginning to see that rules aren't chains, but guides. They help us keep the nonsense meaningful, not meaningless." Their conversation was interrupted by Greta Loop at reception, who waved a sheaf of new requests. "Looks like the city's nonsense quota is climbing again," she said with a grin. "Ready for another day of delightful madness." The clerks exchanged knowing smiles. In this bureau, every day brought a fresh puzzle, misplaced Mondays to redirect, time travel permits to scrutinize, unicorn parking violations to adjudicate. Yet, beneath the absurdity, there was purpose, and in purpose. A kind of order that made nonsense not only manageable, but magical. As the afternoon light waned and the city outside shimmered with improbable hues, the Bureau of Absurd Affairs continued its eternal dance. It was a dance without end or perfect rhythm, marked by missteps and improvisations, but always moving forward. Within its walls, the clerks embraced their roles with bemused frustration and hopeful absurdity. Guardians of a world where the impossible was not just allowed, but celebrated. And so the Bureau stood equal parts, farce and function, a monument to the complexity of human desire for both control and chaos. Theirs was a story unfinished, a dance ongoing, inviting all who dared to join in the joyful madness, ready for the next step. Eliza asked, a sly smile tugging at her lips. Always, Myra replied. Sketchbook at the ready. Harold nodded, the weight of tradition lightened by the promise of change. As the doors swung open to another day of nonsense, the Bureau's delicate balance held firm, a testament to the enduring magic found in embracing the impossible.